What are we doing in the black community? The number one consumer of a Mercedes-Benz
It's us.
us. The number one consumer of a Gucci and a Louis Vuitton, us. And they don't even advertise. Why is it that in the black community, we are always the number one consumer, but we're not the number one creators?
So you just said it. The fact that there's consumers and creators. For so long, we assume success based on consumption.
Welcome to Closing the Gap, Truth About Black Wealth. I am your co-host, Eddie Richardson, here with our host, Mr. Wilbur Hamilton, the owner of Hamilton Wealth Advisors. We thank you for always listening, tuning in, and all the various means that we get this out to you. Whether you're tuning in to the radio station, V94.9, or you're watching us on YouTube or wherever you access your podcast. We appreciate you listening, and we ask that you refer somebody else, send it to somebody else, share it with somebody else. Also, like, share, and subscribe on YouTube and all your podcast outlets. So we're going to jump in today. Another episode, man. We are always appreciative to be able to talk to the people. And we'll just, when in your field, wealth advising, there are a lot of different things that you do.
Absolutely.
Right? And we just want the people to know about what it is that you do, how you can help us as a public continue to build wealth and do things. And, on the last episode, you really dove into being able to analyze our wealth advisors. You led the people and gave us some good information there. But I was thinking about something, man, about insurance as we seeing different calamities in life, and we all alive now, but everybody has a due date.
Absolutely.
That we're gonna die. And so just want to talk about insurance. We had different insurances. We see term insurance and whole life insurance and how to buy these different things. So if you could tell us about term and whole life and what they are and what's the difference between those, if you will.
Absolutely. Like I said, we talked about last time, you got to build a house on a solid foundation. And the foundation of any solid financial plan is always having the proper coverage and insurance. And because there's two things guaranteed to us here in the United States of America. You're going to die, you're going to pay taxes. Now, you have a choice about the taxes, but there's some repercussions that come along with it. You don't have no choice about that. The Lord controls that. And when he called us home, and ain't nothing we can do about it. So, the things that we know are going to happen, we have to plan and prepare for. So I tell people all the time, I said, look, my plan is, I told the Lord I want 90 happy and healthy. That's what I put out every day of my life. I wake up in the morning, I continue to tell the Lord 90 plus happy and healthy. So just because I asked for it don't mean he gonna give it to me. I got to try to do some things to help that along the way.
That's right.
So I got to do my part. But in saying that, I'm saving for retirement. I'm investing. I'm doing all these wonderful things to live to be 90 happy and healthy. But what happens if God calls us home before then? What do we have in place? What is the situation that I leave my wife in, my sons in? How do they move forward with the loss of not just my life, but the loss of my income that I bring into the home? So those are the things that we just don't take into account enough when it comes to the financial planning process. Of course, nowadays, there's a big craze around crypto and what Trump is trying to do right now and the things that's going on. And we're seeing the crypto market kind of go up a little bit. And, hopefully we get some regulation and stability around that and understanding how that's going to work. But, until we know how that's going to work, we know how life is going to work. Those are things that we know. And, unfortunately, in our community, we have a misconception on what insurance really is and what it was meant for, how to properly utilize it. And nothing is by chance. Everything is by design. It truly is. And, there was a time in this country where African Americans were not allowed to purchase valuable life insurance policies. There were limits put on them. So if you think about, how, grandmama, great grandmama thought about insurance, had the guy that come around the neighborhood. They put the pavement outside the door. He would come by, collect the cash, and had a $5,000 policy with your burial policy, what they known as, and over time, what would happen is, grandmama then paid $10,000 into this policy that was only worth $5,000. So that didn't make a lot of sense. But that was the only idea. That was our only knowledge. That was our only understanding. And that was our only experience with what this thing called insurance was. So we always took it as, well, this is money in case somebody died. They're just enough to kind of put you in the ground, where in reality, insurance is actually the most tax efficient, wealth transferring tool that's ever been created. It is the only vehicle where you can put some money in and take it back out, totally non-taxable from a death benefit standpoint, from a cash value accumulation standpoint. The closest thing to it is a Roth IRA. The difference is, with a Roth, there's a limit on how much you can put in. With life insurance, ain't no limit if you structure it properly. So there's always a game behind the game that we have to understand. Before I listen to the audience and the community at large, we want them to understand the basic and foundational elements of insurance. We gotta, sometimes in our community we can try to erase 400 years in 6 months. We can get a little ahead of ourselves. So we got to kind of bring it back and help them understand the differences, because there's a lot of misconceptions and there's a lot of bad information out there. And that bad information kind of goes into a lot of things that we talked about in the last episode, where, understanding how people are compensated and people are paid, understanding that every company has an agenda. Certain companies focus on selling term insurance. So they tell you buy term, invest different. They tell you that's the best thing since sliced bread. Some companies focus on selling whole life insurance. They say, you know what, term insurance is a waste of money. You don't drain the cash value from it, so you should always put your money in the whole life. Well, too much of anything could be a bad thing.
Okay.
And both of those people they're selling for the benefit and profit and gain of their company. Now, understanding where true insurance companies come from, and a lot of them that were, started years and years ago, I always ask people, you got to look back and see, what was the first thing they insured? It was us. Slaves were actually the first thing insured by a lot of these insurance companies, which is kind of ironic that you used us to insure us for the slave owner, but then you turn around and once we so-called became free, you wouldn't sell insurance to us. That's a little bit of little trivia for you, just to kind of help people understand, because people perish through the lack of knowledge, and you got to know where you come from to kind of know where you're at, to know where you want to go. So understanding just the differences and basics of, I tell people the best way to understand insurance is look at it like two houses.
Okay.
On one hand, you have term. On the other hand, you have permanent insurance. Now, permanent insurance, that encapsulates whole life, universal life, index life, variable life, a lot of different types of permanent life insurance, but most commonly understood is whole life. And then you have term on the other side. So you can buy the house or you can rent the house. Two different houses.
Okay.
So we understand if we have a lease on an apartment, there's three advantages, usually to having that term. It's pretty affordable. Mm-hmm. It's level for the length of time, which either that for that lease, or for in this case, the term policy, maybe 10 years, 15 years, 20 years. And then usually you can convert it at some point in time over into maybe a lease to own or a lease renewal.
Okay.
So it usually has some options at the end of that term. Now, that doesn't mean that those options are always favorable, but it does give you some options. So those are the three key advantages to term insurance. It's, like I say, it's affordable. It's a level payment during that process, during the leasing process, or during that term process, and then usually convert it. Well, with permanent insurance, there's three advantages that people like to point to with that, similar to buying a home. Okay. The first thing is it's level, but it's level for the remainder of your life. If you have a fixed rate mortgage, that payment is level for the next 30 years, 15 years, however long you locked it in. Same thing with life insurance. If you have a permanent life insurance policy, that payment can be locked in either for a set period of time or for the remainder of your life. Okay. The next thing people love about it, much like owning a home, is the cash value equity that you generate. Of course, much like a home, you put money into it over time, it appreciates in value. You can go and pull money back out of that home, non-taxable. You can go in the same thing with a life insurance policy. If you deposit and make payments into your permanent life insurance policy, it generates interest as well, and you can actually borrow from your policies. It's where you hear people saying, be your own bank, infinite banking theory, all these different things that have become very popular, here in the past 5 to 10 years. And then the third thing people love about it, similar to a home, is that you actually own that policy. So that policy can mature and endow. If you fully funded that policy, it comes a point in time when you actually don't have to make any more payments into that policy, much like your home. So you can actually have that much like your home, you have a 30-year mortgage where you paid that note for 30 years. All of a sudden now you own that home. You have full rights and control over that, and any cash that's accumulated inside of that home is now yours to utilize however you see fit. Insurance policy can work much the same way. you now have had that policy for a certain period of time. It's matured, it's gained interest, it's grown. Now you can access that cash value and use it for whatever you want. I've seen people utilize it. We help them to supplement retirement with it. I've seen people utilize it to help pay for kids' college education.
Okay.
I've seen it used to help for down payments on homes for kids, grandkids. I've seen people utilize it to help purchase second homes or vacation homes. So there's no limit to the use of the funds because it's your money to utilize. Because all it is the interest that's generating off of the premium payments that you're making.
Okay.
So on any we'll call permanent policy, there's an interest rate attached to it that's going to generate tax-free cash that you can utilize to do whatever you would like to do with it. So a lot of flexibility with understanding the two and, what their purposes are. So I tell people like this, when they're trying to decide what kind of insurance to buy, I say, term is just like it sounds. Term is meant to cover temporary debt. Mm-hmm. Permanent insurance is meant to cover permanent situations. Death is permanent. There's no coming back. The mortgage on my home is temporary. So the way I tell clients to look at it, say, look, if I bought a new home in 2022 and I took on more debt. Now that debt is a temporary debt. It's here. I have a 30-year mortgage. So I took out additional term insurance coverage to cover the debt on that home. So I took out a term policy to cover my mortgage. Okay. Now, the great thing about that is I'm paying on my mortgage on a monthly basis. The value of that term policy is staying the same. Mm-hmm. So God forbid if something happened to me in year 30, that term policy will pay out and my wife can basically at that point in time keep whatever's left. Or if I pass, God forbid, 15 years in, she can pay the difference and still have the remainder. Now, I also have a permanent insurance policy because death is a permanent situation. There's no coming back from. So on one hand, I have to cover my debts. So if I have business loans, car loans, that's temporary debt that I planned on paying off through my earning power, earning potential. So I planned on paying that. So I have a term policy to cover that debt. And also I have a permanent policy that I utilize. That is the wealth transference. That is what I want to make sure passes on to the next generation, my wife, my kids. That's what we want to leave a legacy with. So understanding how to utilize the two is key. And anybody who tells you one is good or one is bad or one is worse than the other is thinking about themselves, not thinking about you.
That's good. That's good. I like that. Much like you did last week in saying that beware of anybody that only recommends one thing.
Absolutely.
We want the people to be very informed. That's why we like for you to tune in to Closing the Gap, because we want to tell you the truth about Black Wealth.
Absolutely.
And anybody that only sells you one thing is not being honest.
Absolutely.
They're not being truthful. So that's why we like for you to tune in to Closing the Gap, because Mr. Hamilton is going to take the time to lead you in the right direction, not for his benefit, but for your benefit. We are looking to help all of our people. We want us as a people to grow. We want us as a community to grow. We want the wealth transfer along generations to happen. And we want to close the gap between us and everybody else in the world. And the only way to do that is to have true and honest conversations about what is available here in the community. And so you just laid out some things, Wilwood, about, how term life, whole life, and good examples of how to do these things. So when, like you said, you recommend different ways and you teach the people what to get, what do you really use as a basis, I would say, when a person comes in, and how do you evaluate their situation?
So first thing we got to do is a needs analysis.
Okay.
We got to analyze your needs and figure out, because you come in and most people want to talk about their wants, but they don't really understand, and because they haven't evaluated the needs. Much like we talked about at the beginning of the year, we all got to do the self-check, the self-evaluation. We like to ignore the flaws and accentuate our strengths. So, my job is to come in and see what you don't see. It's to plan for the unexpected. That's why I tell people, as an advisor, I plan for the worst and then I hope for the best. So when I'm looking at a situation, I'm looking at how much debt do you have? What is your income? What are your expenses? We got to evaluate your total financial landscape, your total livelihood, and see, where are the chinks in the armor? Okay. If something is not addressed. And, so we'll look at that and say, you know what, based on your position right now, cash flow may not be where you want it to be right now. You may be in the process of trying to knock down some credit card debt. You spent too much at Christmas trying to give your kids all the toys and gifts you wanted to have. Don't act like it's just me. It's all of us. We've all been there. We've all done that before. And hopefully you learn from it. We come back and say, and we start doing stocks over stuff again, and we start making sure that we put our kids in the best situation to help them understand that, look, we want to start teaching some good financial habits. But in doing that, if we see that, okay, we have a cash flow situation right now because we're trying to knock down some debt, we're trying to increase our savings. Well, that's not at a time when we would go and recommend permanent life insurance more than likely. At that time, we would say, you know what? We got to make sure we get some coverage because the best kind of insurance to have is the kind that's in force when you pass away. Because when you pass away, they don't ask you, is it term or is it permanent? All they ask you, is it in force? Yeah. And we want to make sure you got something in force when God calls you home. So that's the most important thing. So when people say, what's the best kind? Whatever kind you got when you pass away is the best kind. So, but within that, in that situation, if we have a cash flow tight or crunch, so to speak, we want to make sure we start off and at least get that term coverage in place. We want to make sure that at least you're doing your due diligence, making sure you're thinking about yourself and also the people you say you love and you care about, because you don't want to leave them in a tight situation where they're left to make tough decisions and have to pick and choose. Do we keep the house? Do we sell the house? Do we move out of the school zone in the neighborhood that you wanted us to live in and move across town, or I got to move across country with my parents or my folks or wherever I'm from because we don't have enough means to stay here where we are. So making sure that we have coverage in place. So at that time, we will examine some term coverage because with term, obviously, that's the item that's going to allow you to get the most amount of coverage for the lowest available price. So if that's the situation, that's what we go with. Now, that's not a right or wrong. Yeah. That's not a preference. And that's a situational need. Okay. So that's why I said we always have to start with just an analysis and understanding, where we are, because just because we start there doesn't mean we're going to end there. Okay. That's a first step. And this might be a part of laying the foundation because, when we sit down with clients, the first thing we want to look at is, do you have your protection in place? And then we want to make sure you got your savings in place before we even talk about growing your money. So I would tell people, you got to work in a 3-step process. And as an advisor, if your advisor is talking to you and they're jumping the gun and they're talking about growing money and they haven't talked about protecting your assets, protecting your life, which is most, precious asset is your life because it allows you to have earning potential. And then you have to have what's called savings because life is going to happen. Flat tires, air conditioners going out, pipes going to freeze. Of course, it's super cold right now. Yeah. Things are going to happen. So we have to be prepared. So if I have protection in place and then I have savings in place for life events, now I can then focus on starting to grow the money into investments. But all too often, we want to talk about what sounds good and not what is good for us. Like I say, we don't like to eat the vegetables all the time. We want to go straight to the dessert because dessert tastes good. It feels a lot better. It's smoother. It's richer. It's sweeter to us. It's convenient. Whereas those vegetables usually take a little bit longer to prepare. Sometimes you may have to go somewhere to get them. You got to find a store that specializes in fresh vegetables. We always want good vegetables. Good vegetables are hard to find, so to speak. They always say eating healthy costs. No, and it does to a certain extent, but you get what you pay for. Yeah. So understanding that, and that's how you should look at your financial landscape and making sure that you've done your due diligence, you've checked these boxes, and you've assessed your situation, not somebody else's situation, but your own situation. Just because everybody's telling you need to go and invest in crypto, or you need to go invest in an IUL, or you need to go and do this, that, and the third. Those may be great things to do. That doesn't mean those things can't be beneficial or can't work, but you have to make sure that you're doing it on your time and making sure that your time allows and aligns with God's time for you to do it. Yeah. A lot of times we want to put the cart before the horse. We want to jump in and start doing things because it's what we want. Yeah. And we haven't really sat down and understood where we are to properly evaluate the situation.
Wow. That's good. That's good. So what I'm hearing is this. Be patient with yourself. Make sure you have your foundation set. Definitely, whether it's term or whole life, first thing you need to do is sit down and do a needs analysis. Absolutely. And that comes with coming to Hamilton Wealth Advisors. That's what we recommend. Hey, we'll be foolish not to promote ourselves.
Absolutely.
That's why we're here.
Absolutely.
Right? But whether you come here see Mr. Hamilton or you go see anybody else. We want you to have your foundation set. We want you to be able to cover you and your family first and foremost, because you being alive and being covered is the number one thing to being able to earn wealth. Then after that, finding the right insurance, and then you can be able to close the wealth gap in your family.
Remember, a righteous man leaves the inheritance to his children. Are you?
Appreciate y'all tuning in. Closing the Gap Podcast, Truth About Black Wealth. I'm your co-host, Eddie Richardson, here with your host, Mr. Wilbur Hamilton.
Yes, sir.
Man, we were just coming in talking about, taking care of yourself and how, family dynamics and, how we husbands, wives, kids, dealing with family, and you got to keep your foundation intact to be able to care for one another.
Absolutely.
Right. And we also just thinking about, as we coming into this year, we've been talking about planning, and we've been talking about writing a vision, making it plain, and so also with that, man, in dealing with holistic health and protecting yourself, keeping ourselves grounded. We just want to talk today also about some of those things, man. So, Wilbur, what did you say was one of the first things you would say, man, we need to do to protect ourselves foundationally?
Prayer changes things.
Prayer changes things.
I gotta before your feet hit the ground, Lord, thank you. Lord, I'm gonna holler if you hear me. We gonna have a conversation. So that's my go-to every morning before I get up, before I even, like I say, lean up in the bed, before I, sit up and sit on the edge of the bed for 15 minutes and think about what I got to do for the rest of the day. First thing I got to do is just, have a quick little 5, 10, 15-minute conversation with God and just see where it go from there. So it's depending on how the night was the night before, how the day was the day before, that conversation may be a little bit longer, sometimes a little bit shorter, but, we got to have a conversation first and foremost. And my first thing is just trying to, hear from him.
Okay.
And get a little extra guidance and direction on, where I should take things for the day. Because I'm a firm believer in talking to the Lord at all times and having a conversation with him. And because I truly know he does speak back.
Okay.
He does provide you a spirit of discernment once you do build that relationship with him. And, when you get into that word for the day, and I know many of us have opened up that book before, and you see that verse that comes to you, and that verse of the day that pops up, and like, Lord, you knew exactly what I need to hear this morning. Or somebody calls you and gives you a word that, like, what, may not come when you want it, but it's always on the time. It's just nice. So you hearing and seeing those signs from him, and what you should be doing and how you should be thinking. And that's what I tell them, just not for myself, before I meet with clients and every advisor that, that works for the company. I said, look, before I walk into a meeting, Lord, let your will be done, not mine. That's always my prayer, before I meet with any client and under any situations, that because I always want him to lead the way and not me. Because of course, we are imperfect individuals. No man is perfect. We all have imperfections. But I always say, Lord, you lead the way. Let me follow you and lead me the direction you would have me to go with this client, so I can always make sure that I'm doing what's in the best interest of the client at all times. So for me, it's always have a conversation with the Lord, just kind of talk to him. Let that be the foundation of your day. Helps get you grounded a little bit. Helps clear your mind a little bit. So I'm gonna, read a few verses. I'm gonna say a few prayers to myself. I'm gonna pray for my wife. I'm gonna pray for my kids. I'm gonna, pray for the day that I got ahead. And because after that, life happens.
Yeah.
And, hopefully you get another chance throughout the day to have another brief conversation with them. But that's always my start of the morning. Just kind of, getting there and just kind of, preparing myself, mentally, for the fight ahead. I always say that, you got to die daily, to your flesh. Because as soon as you get up and walk outside the door, there are going to be temptations and, things are going to come at you. And the devil's going to be trying to, get to the act out the character every now and then. So you got to be able to hold your peace, so to speak. So for me, it's always just kind of trying to set the foundation of my day, you know, with having that conversation with the Lord.
Yeah. Nah, that's good, man. Because when you do that, you are insuring yourself, right? We talked about, you know, term life, whole life insurance, and those type things, right? Protecting yourself, protecting your assets, right? And so while we do that for our good here on earth, then also internally we have to do that in line with God. You know, foundationally keeping our mind focused, keeping our hearts right through that prayer, through that conversation. The song, as you said that, I thought about the song, Have a Little Talk with Jesus. Tell him all about our troubles. He'll hear our faintest cry. And you know what I'm saying? And so when we do that now, I am able to settle myself. And while I don't allow the world, then I won't allow the world and everything that I come in contact with to get me off course.
Absolutely.
Now I'm able to be reminded of what my vision is that I've written down for the year. I'm able to be reminded of what my mission is that I've written down to guide my life. And when I do that, then now every single thing that I do is guided by that vision and that mission, because I've got myself focused as I begin my day, as I begin my week, as I begin my month, as we begin our year. And so that's how protect your peace, I would say, right?
Well, you know, I said it like this. I said, you know, you got to have insurance, but the Lord provides assurance. So we need insurance and assurance. So having that conversation with the Lord when we start the day, it provides some blessed assurance. So, you know what? He got my back. We're on the same page. You know, the Lord's provided me enough peace to start my day. So then sometimes I think you got to talk to the Lord to, you know, make sure you got enough peace to move in this chaotic world, you know, that we live in. You know, we got a joyful yet anticlimactic day, you know, that we were having, you know, this week. We got inauguration on one hand and, of course, MLK Day, you know, on the other. So, you know, that's, you know, a light on one end, and, you know, it's a little bit of instability and, you know, unsure and unpredictability. And I've learned that God provides stability in an unpredictable world. He is that stability. He is that stabilizing factor. So when everything else is going on around you and things are uncertain and you're unsure and you're uneasy and, you know, you're not sure where things are going to go, like a lot of us are unsure whether this new administration is going to take things. He's already off to a fast start. I mean, he's been announcing, you know, deportations and border closings and, you know, crypto advances. And I mean, you know, he's been, you know, pointing people here, you know, charging people there. So he's got a lot of things going on in a lot of different ways. And, you know, for the general public, of course, we always wonder, how is that going to affect us? You know, like we talked about before, every situation provides an opportunity. But do you see the opportunity in the situation? And I don't think you can see the opportunity if you're not connected to God and have the conversation, because he's the provider of the opportunity.
Yes.
So you got to be connected to him and having a relationship with him and waking up in the morning and having that stable foundation and having that peace, because you can't see an opportunity if you don't have peace. You know, it's just funny. I've learned just throughout life is anytime things get a little bit chaotic and life starts moving too fast for me, I slow down and I stop, because obviously the Lord is not author of confusion. You know, he operates, you know, he said, I'm going to give you peace that surpasses all understanding. So for me, anytime I look at the world and the world starts, you know, going off kilter a little bit, things start getting a little crazy, whether it's in the world or even in my life, and I feel like things are moving too fast, I stop, I slow down, and I pray.
Okay.
And I try to, of course, to center myself. And while doing that, I've learned never pray for understanding. I always pray for peace, because when I asked the Lord for understanding, I only gained more confusion. I was to understand how the God was going to do what he was going to do. Well, he already told you, my ways are not your ways, my thoughts are not your thoughts. So you can't understand how God going to do what he going to do. It's your responsibility to trust that he's going to do what he said he's going to do. He ain't got to tell you how he going to do it.
Right.
You guys got to trust that he going to do it. So once I learned to say, you know what? let me just pray for peace, not pray for understanding. Now, once I prayed for peace, as time went on, God then granted me the understanding of what was going on. But he couldn't give me the understanding while I was praying for understanding. He had to settle me till I got to a point where I was praying for peace. And peace produces understanding. And that's where I think, it's kind of the opposite of the way we work as humans, because we always want to understand. We want to know exactly how things work. And it ain't up to us to know how things are going to work. It's up for us to trust that it's going to work. Like, I'm not a mechanic. I can't fix the car. I ain't changed no oil. I can change the tire, don't get me wrong. But most things mechanically, that's not me. I ain't putting it together at the house. My wife said, we got to get a shelf put up. Hey, I'm calling the handyman, baby. I'm doing it. I'm sorry. But I understand that.
Yeah.
So I've done the same thing with my relationship with Christ. Lord, it ain't my job to understand how you going to do it, how you going to put this thing together. It's my job just to trust that you are. And then when you're going through trials and tribulation, when you're going through things in life, that is one of the biggest things that I've learned that's provided me peace to be able to move in and out of storms and through storms, is that I no longer pray for understanding. Mm-hmm. I pray for peace.
Yeah. No, I love that, because that's that Philippians chapter 4 and verse 7 specifically, and then just reading 4 through 7. That's what the writer of the text is talking about, is that, hey, we live in a world where you're going to be bombarded with life situations. You're going to be bombarded with challenges that you're going to face in your personal life, but then also in the public life. Right? And right now, for our listeners, we want you to understand that while we are in this political season, while we are in this health season, and various situations that happen in life, you have fires in California, you have calamities. We don't know when a tornado is going to come. We don't know when a hurricane is going to come, but whatever may happen in our public life and in our personal life and in the political life of this world, you need to know that in everything, by prayer and supplication, let your request be known to God. And that's when the peace of God, which passes all understanding, will keep your hearts and minds centered on Christ. So as we go through, we can't allow external things to have an adverse effect on us internally.
Yes.
Right? That's what gets you offset. That's what ends up making you lose hope and lose focus, because we've been encouraging you at the start of this year, write your vision down, write your mission down, write your plan down, and to protect yourself as you try to execute those things. There are going to always be things and people that come, up against you, right? There's going to be challenges within, challenges with your health, challenges within your family, things that you can see coming, and then there's going to be a lot of things that you cannot see coming. So how do you guard yourself against that? Well, we're telling you today, center yourself in prayer and supplication and search for the peace of God, and let the peace of God guide you in every situation. And that's what's going to provide you protection. That's what's going to give you a refuge. God is our refuge.
Absolutely.
Right. And when we talk about a refuge, it's a condition of being sheltered. It's a condition of being safe when you are in danger or in trouble. And I would venture to say that every day that we wake up, there's a potential for danger and trouble.
Absolutely.
Out here, right? That we don't know what we're going to face. You talked about, in home, things may break or something may happen with the vehicle. And there are some things that you're capable of doing, and there are some things that you're not. And what we have to realize is what are our capabilities, and be comfortable in those, but not be too overconfident in them, right? But then also realize that there are going to be some things that happen that we are not capable of handling on our own. And so we have to rely on God being that greater power that will help us. And then also, we're talking about now, we're going to need community.
Absolutely.
More than ever.
Absolutely.
Right? We're going to have to rely on one another more than ever now, because that's where our strength lies, is in each other.
And I think that's the blessing of where we are right now. And, there's always, opportunity if you can identify the opportunity. And I think the Lord allows you to be able to help discern and view opportunities. And right now, what we're going through in this country, and as a change is upon us, literally upon us as we speak, we're in a situation where we're going to need each other more than ever, because obviously the truth is being revealed before our very eyes. Like I say, watch as well as pray. The Lord ain't tell you to close your eyes. He said, watch as well as pray. So I pray with my eyes wide open. And look, I can see what's going on, January 20th, the inauguration, how they're operating, how they're doing it. But at the same time, if my eyes were closed and I watched the actions that they take or took, I watch, some of the lack of respect that was given, on such an honorable day, where you have, of course, and Martin Luther King, who stood for peaceful protest, who stood for, all people. He had the Poor Person's March, which actually got him killed. It wasn't until he was talking about, real reparations and real equity and inclusion until they said no more. And just so happened, of course, we have an inauguration on that very same day, and what that individual represents being really the total opposite of that. That is a signal to us as a community that, look, if we want to move forward and do anything, we're going to have to come together. You can't fight fire with fire at all times if you ain't got enough firepower. We got to come together to build up our own firepower. And that comes by connecting all of us back together as a community. That means, social organizations, church organizations, our communities, we need more community centers. We need, the local governments to be more involved and active in the communities. We need parents to be more active and engaged in their kids' lives. We need, kids to be taught what respect is and learn to give more respect. So, a lot of things kind of go into, helping us to take advantage of the opportunity that's being presented, because it truly is an opportunity. I would tell people the most money is made in times of chaos. So, right now, when things seem a little bit chaotic, I promise you, when you look back at all the wealth that's being created and established, it's going to be during those times. If you look back through what happened during the pandemic, or you look back through a situation where you had a Hurricane Katrina, you go back and look at how much money was truly being made from these various governmental entities and people that were involved and understood how the money was being given out. There's going to be a lot of governmental assistance that's going to be passed out in California. Are we going to be in place to get into that money? So there's going to be cleanup, search and rescue. There's going to be rebuilding that has to take place. But guess what? One of the biggest things is going to have to be things just going to have to be cleared out.
Yes.
That's a business in itself. When you're talking about just the removal. Mm-hmm. So you think about the companies like the ServPros and them companies that come in and they clean up and they repair and those are industries right now that we got to find out, do we have anybody in our community that's involved in that? Hey, do you have a home base in California? Do you know somebody who does that in California? Can we get together and put some of those things together so we can benefit? Because there's going to be government grants, there's going to be aid, there's going to be financial assistance. And that's why I always tell people, I said, look, we got to understand the economics involved in everything that's going on around us. Because the only thing that people that don't look like us, that like to hold us back, look at is economics. They really could care less about the color of your skin. They care about the color green more than they hate the color black. Mm-hmm. And anybody that disrupts the financial status of their community and their standing, anything that threatens that, they automatically come against it. That could be black, Asian, that could be Hispanic, anybody who gets in the way or threatens the perceived power. Yeah. Because they always talk about, of course, we got to make America great again. We're trying to figure out, well, when wasn't it great for you? At what point in time has it not been great? Now we know sometimes and still times when it's not so great for us. Right. But if you're thinking that right now is not great for you, what are you really trying to take it back to? How much are you really trying to control? Because you control a majority, if not all of the wealth right now. But they're telling you, we don't want some of the control. We want all of it. And if they want all of it, then they expect us not to have none of it. So what are we going to do about that? Are we going to sit on the sideline and going to complain and cry and whine about what people are not doing? Well, guess what? People ain't been doing it for a long time. Mm-hmm. Well, a lot of times the people can't do nothing because we ain't supported people who can do something. Mm-hmm. And they can't do nothing a lot of times, and they get frustrated and give up because you're not supporting them. The same way our local black businesses don't receive enough support, our local black politicians don't receive enough support, and we talking about financial support. So we're going to go ahead and we're going to kick this game and keep it real clear, and we're going to pick this up on the next episode. When you tune back in after this brief commercial, we're going to jump into the difference between economics and politics and which one came first. See you in a minute. Welcome back, of course, V94.9 WATV. Of course, I'm your host, Mr. Wilbert Hamilton, here, of course, here with my co-host and very special gentleman, Mr. Eddie Richardson. And we're going to kind of jump right back into it, man. And, you know, I was having a conversation with the older gentleman one day. He's, you know, been a high-ranking official in multiple, not multiple, but a political party. And he had a conversation with me. He said, Wilbert, so I'm going to go ahead and tell you something. This is how this thing works. He said, there's economics, and then there's politics. He said, well, but how long have economics been around? You know, me being an economics major, I'm like, well, economics has been around since the beginning of time. There's always been buying and trading of goods and services, bartering, some kind of financial system. Right. And he said, well, how long do you think politics been around? I said, well, you really didn't start to hear about politics, you know, until maybe 120 years ago. You know, politics weren't that big. He said, well, why do you think politics came about? I said, well, you know, me looking at it, I said, well, you know, they want to be able to dictate and control. He said, yeah, but control what? So I thought about it. He said, look, politics were put in place to control the economics. If you don't understand the economics, you probably shouldn't be involved in politics. And, you know, light bulb went off to me, and I've had multiple conversations with a lot of different political officials, and unfortunately, especially in our community more than any other, we have too many politicians that don't understand the economics. And you can want things to change all you want. You can have wishful thinking all you want. You can say, well, you know what? I'm going to put a bill before, you know, the Senate, Congress, the House, whoever. I'm trying to get some things done in with my local government, and we're going to push for change. But if a check ain't coming along with their request, that change ain't gonna happen. You know, unfortunately, that's the way our world works. It's the reason why we have lobbyists in this country. Yeah. There's the reason why all these big corporations, they have lobbyists and they're giving out funds to multiple politicians. There's the reason why Trump can raise the money he raised. There's a reason why Kamala Harris could raise the kind of money she raised, because there were people that wanted to be in bed with these people because they had an agenda they were trying to push from a financial perspective. They don't care nothing about the social change. You know, social justice is really a facade. I don't care if you speak to me or not. I don't care if you dislike me or not. But what I do care about is if you stop me from getting a mortgage for my home. Yeah. If you stop me from getting a loan for my business. Yeah. If you are purposely blocking me from being able to go out and earn a living for my family. Those are things that directly affect me. And all too often in our community, we've been bamboozled into thinking that, you know, going into politics and, you know, voting is going to make the ultimate change. And if their vote is not coming along with a check, then there's no change going to be made. So having to understand that we need to understand the economics. We have, as a community, have to come together, pool our resources, which really means we got to start supporting each other from a business and financial standpoint. As long as our money is leaving our community faster than every other community out there, whereas our money circulates in our economy from an economic standpoint less than an hour. So that means time a dollar get in, that means a dollar is going back out. And the dollar is going back out to other communities. So give you an example. They say the Asian community dollar circulates 17 times before it leaves. You know, the Caucasian community dollar circulates, like 35 times before it leaves. You know, the black community does circulate at all. So we have the wealth in our community of most small countries and greater than a lot of small countries. If we just look at the wealth that's generated in the African American community, just in this country, if we were to pool those resources together, I'm not saying you got to give all your money to somebody that look like you, but I'm saying if we could pool some of those resources together to say, hey, what are some initiatives and things that we want to do? We're just now trying to get an anti-lynching bill passed. That should have been done 100 years ago. We should not be having a conversation about a black hate crime bill in 2025. There were things that should have been done way beforehand, but when you don't have an economic base and you've been tricked into thinking that one political party cares more about you than the other, when in actuality, neither one of them did nothing for you. They both equally as bad, and we won't be honest about the situation. Now, do we lean more to one or the other? Well, that's really been depending on what period of time we're in, because there was a point in time when we were all Republican, and that's when we had the greatest wealth from a community standpoint, and now we all Democrat. Now, I'm definitely not pro-Trump, but any sane person can understand that there are values in each one on certain topics that could be implemented. The problem is we're split as far as who we're supporting. And because we're split, that means our money split. We don't have enough wealth in our community for our money and dollars to be split going in different directions. So we got some going Republican, we got some going Democrat, we got some going independent. Well, we don't have enough wealth pooled together to get anything done. So if we just pool that wealth together, and regardless of which one you for, do like the Asians. Let's be like them. They not supporting any one of them publicly. They just going to whichever one is in charge at the time, and they cutting the check and saying, you know what, this is what I want to have happen, and guess what is done. It's the reason why we go to any major town in America, there's a, Little Italy, there's a Little China, there's, Chinatown, there's a Koreatown, and you never see no police in them areas. All of them got their own bank. All of them got their own system. They got their own mini country inside of our cities.
Yeah.
And we ain't got a neighborhood. And we've been here since the beginning.
Well, I think to that end, when we're talking about the politics and talking about these things that are going on and what we're steadily fighting for, is because that's why you had a fight to make America great again.
Yeah.
Is because they want to get back to that and keep that power and keep that oppression set. Couple of things you talked about I want to address. Number one, just what you just said about Republicans and Democrats. Dr. King, I was listening to one of his speeches, and he was talking about the Northern Republicans and the Southern Democrats that were influenced by the Dixiecrats. And he said that both of those parties suffered from a high blood pressure of words and an anemia of deeds. That they talk loud and say what they're going to do, but then neither one of these parties do what's necessary for us.
Absolutely.
And that's why we have to continue to fight. Another thing I want to address with what you said was the coming together. We have to get back to churches that are centered on caring for God's people. Get back to the hub, right? It doesn't take a lot of us. It just takes we just need enough of us in order to evoke change. For our people, and this is an election year, while many of us are so focused on the inauguration of this week that happened on Monday during Martin Luther King's birthday, and so focused on what Trump and the Republicans will or won't do. What we need to start paying attention to right now, and I want to press this upon the people, is that most of your cities throughout the state of Alabama are going to have local elections on August 26th. The majority of the cities throughout the state of Alabama will have mayoral elections on August 26th. And just about every city throughout this state. What we need to do is make sure that these mayors and council persons of these various cities, that we lock in with them and hold them accountable to getting things done that we need done from a political standpoint for the economic advancement of our people.
Absolutely.
I was listening to, I love, Maynard Jackson, and I think we have interviewed him on here before. you know what I'm saying, the 54th and 56th mayor of Atlanta. And Maynard Jackson Jr. was pivotal for African Americans, and he did some things that were cutting edge in his day and his time. And I was listening to an interview that his oldest son-in-law did. And his oldest son-in-law, he talked about how Maynard Jackson took the time, and one of the things that he made sure that he did as the mayor of Atlanta was, he said that Maynard made sure that he did everything he could ethically to ensure that African Americans had the economic wealth that they could take care of.
Yes.
And from his standpoint as the mayor, he made sure that he did everything ethically. Now, so what we want you as a listening audience to do, and if we have any elected officials to tune in, the challenge for you is, as an elected official, is to ask yourself, are you doing everything ethically that you can do to ensure that wealth is transferred to the African American people? Are you making sure that you are doing that from your standpoint to build entrepreneurs, to make sure that we are able to close the wealth gap? Because like you said, economics came before politics.
Absolutely.
So now that you're in politics, you have access and the right to make sure that we have more economic value, that we have more wealth within our community. And then for us as a people, as voters, we need to press that upon our people that want to be elected, is that say, hey, when we come to support you, we're not just supporting you because we like you, because you look good, because you talk good, and you talk a good game. No, we don't want an anemia of deeds. All right, we don't want that high blood pressure of words and you just talking to us over and over and over and giving us empty promises. No. You have the office, and when you get elected, there is no they that can keep you from doing what you can do. There is no watchman over your shoulder that can keep you from doing what you can do. There is nobody that can tell you don't do this, right? Because that's too many times I hear that. It's like they watching. Yeah.
Well, who is that?
Something right?
You know,
And here's the thing that Maynard Jackson's son-in-law said. He said that Mayor Jackson would say any elected official that's in the office that will not do everything that they can to make sure that wealth is transferred to the Negro race. He said that they suffered from the scared Negro disease.
well, like I say, scared money don't make money. And, me, I'm going to call a spade a spade. We're going to shoot them straight. We got a lot of scared politicians. And we got a lot of people that have placed their own personal gain ahead of the reason they said they want to be in office. Because when you go into public service, it's supposed to be just that public servant. You're supposed to be there for the people. You got put there by the people. So you're supposed to be there to support the people.
That's right.
But you got in there and you started to support yourself, and you say, you know what? Man, I want to stay in this office. This thing look good. Man, my kids they went to private school. My kids in a good situation. I've been accepted by people that don't look like me a little bit. They treat me pretty good. I like the way this feel. So you know what? I know what I said I was going to do for y'all, but they treat me real good right about now. So I'm thinking to hang on to this position right now. And the greater good does not supersede their own personal gain. And that's why, as crazy it is, me being a financial advisor, I always say that I don't believe an African-American man can be truly capitalist. Because when you're truly capitalist, you are truly focused on the bottom line and the growth of your own personal wealth and assets. Well, when you do that and you look like us, well, that means that you're going to have to sacrifice a lot of people that look like you. Because the higher you go up the mountain, the wider that snow gets. So at some point in time, you have to start, saying, look, what's more important? Is another dollar more important than me making sure $5 get back to my community? Are we willing to make that so-called sacrifice? Are we willing to press upon people that, you know what, I'm going to be unapologetically black? So that's where the conversation gets a little uncomfortable for them, because we've been tricked into believing that being unapologetically black is some kind of negative thing when everybody else is unapologetically them. White is unapologetically white. They have no problem telling you, yeah, I'm saving this job for my nephew, my niece, my cousin, my brother, my friend of mine. Asians have no problem telling you, we don't dislike you. We just love us more. So guess what? I love me more too. I'm going to support the people that look like me more than I support the people that don't look like me. And that doesn't mean I dislike anyone. Right. That doesn't mean I'm against anyone. That just means that I know my community needs it more. I know my community deserves it more. So I'm going to do any and everything in my power to benefit my community. And I'm going to be unapologetic about it. Until we get bold enough to be unapologetically black and not acquiescing, trying to make everybody else feel good, because guess what? We've watched a president that was going into office be unapologetic about any and everything he's done, regardless of how it's looked at or perceived by anybody else. And one thing that you can't hate on him about is he get done what he want to get done. So at the end of the day, what's more important? Is it more important to be liked, or is it more important to be effective?
Right.
See, we get caught up in it. Well, they don't like me. Well, they're going to talk about me. Well, they're going to do that anyway.
About you anyway.
Well, you know, what do you want to do? Do you want to be Uncle Tom or you want to be Sambo? You know, like I said, a lot of times we don't want to, we don't understand what Uncle Tom wasn't a bad guy. He actually was beneficial and helped us. The Sambo was actually the problem. So we have a misconception of a lot of things in our community as to how we should operate, how we can help, how we can benefit people. And we are some very scared Negroes. We've become very docile in nature. We have taken on our men have taken on a lot of feminine traits. We are very emotional. And, you know, I was listening to a thing one time and it said, this is why they don't believe a woman can raise a man by herself. It's not that she can't raise a man and he can grow up and he can be successful. It's that being around a woman solely without that male influence, it puts him in a more emotional environment because women are naturally more emotional than men. Just genetically speaking. I ain't, not saying they're not good decision makers, but they're naturally more emotional. So if a man grows up in an environment where he's truly going to take on the environment that he's around, that's going to get more ingrained in him. So by becoming more emotional, that means you have a lot of men who are not feminine, but have a more emotional decision making. So we fly off the handle more. That don't mean you're not tough. That don't mean you're a punk. It just means you're more emotional based in your reaction. So being more emotional based makes you fly off the handle and do things that you probably wouldn't have done if you would have taken the emotion out of the decision-making process. Those are things in our community that has happened just over time because of the breakdown of the black family in a way that hasn't happened in other communities. So when you got daddy there, hey man, toughen up. Hey man, I don't want to hear that. Stop all that crying. I need you to stand up and be a man. We're not doing that right now.
Make sure you evaluate
exactly.
How you make your decision, which is why we have killings in the neighborhood,
exactly.
Things like that, because you are doing it. You're not doing it making a sound decision.
Straight out of emotion.
When you are doing it and making correct decisions and understanding the ramifications that will happen after you make that decision. And so we had that on the bottom level of our community, and then also at the top level of our community, we have a lack of sound decision making as well when we get to our politicians and things like that. And also those of us that are not only the politicians, because I hold us accountable. Absolutely. You know what I'm saying? Those of us that are become the high earners in the community, right? We end up getting ours and then we get out the way. Right. We are comfortable with, okay, now I've made mine and I continue to have mine. And so I'm going to move away from everybody else in the sense of not like physically move, but mentally I dissociate myself.
Disconnect
with my people to where I don't feed them the information that I have. I don't feed them the knowledge that I have. I don't feed them the access that I have. That now I gatekeep what I have because I'm afraid to let anybody else in because I say, hey, I need to be the only one.
I need to be the only one. And we scared that we don't want the person that let us in or that group of people that we feel like let us in, we don't want to let them see that we're too comfortable with a bunch of us and we're going to let more of us in because that's what's going to cause us to lose our position. You know, we got that crab in the barrel mentality. Of course, yeah, well, I've made it. And if I've made it, that means that anybody else that comes along is going to probably be taking my place versus somebody else comes along, we could be standing there side by side working together. So we got to, erase a lot of, damage that's been done to us psychologically, even going way back to slavery. We got a lot of psychological issues just in our community that we have to work through. We have to get better. But, that's where we come, where we start out. We say prayer changes things.
That's right.
So that's why at the beginning of every morning before my feet hit solid ground, I got to tell the Lord, hey, you know what? Come into my life, lead me, guide me, and help me to be who I need to be through you. Let your will be done, not mine. See you next time.